Thank you. Okay, so we're just a little bit late here. Call the meeting to order at 9:34. And I'm going to begin with an acknowledgement of the Queen's passing before we do the adoption of the agenda. And we'd like to comment that we join with everyone throughout the Commonwealth and from around the world in sharing our condolences with the royal family of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth's passing. Queen Elizabeth II was a remarkable individual who dedicated her life to public service, providing 70 years of leadership to the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth countries who recognized her as a head of state. From the aftermath of World War II and through the administrations of 12 different Canadian prime ministers, Queen Elizabeth II provided strong guidance and leadership with dignity and integrity. And in recognition of the Queen's passing, our flags are at half-mast. And with that, I would like to observe a 20-second moment of silence. Thank you, everybody. Okay, with that, we'll begin with adoption of the agenda. And do you have anything from the men?
No, Your Worship.
Anything from council? Councillor Williams.
I'd like to add it'd probably be an in-camera VoIP. What's personnel?
Okay, you have any kind of framework for it? Just
Without saying too much, it kind of what we talked about before. I don't know how to word that.
Yeah, it's just personnel.
personnel matter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Item.
So we'll call that, where is our? It'll be 11.5. Personnel matter. Personnel is VoIP 17? Yes? Okay. All right, anything further? I'll accept Councillor Cush.
I'll make a motion to move the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Cush. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. That'll bring us to the adoption of the minutes, and we have a bit of an issue there. Grief, I'm on the wrong spot in my agenda.
Item 11, Committee of the Whole.
Right. Where are we here? So we've got, this isn't the one I had.
Missing the, who moved out of closed session.
Somebody took the minute sheet that we'd scribbled on.
That'd be me, Your Worship.
Oh, okay.
I believe I did that, John.
What's that?
I moved that. I made that
You?
motion.
Okay.
And then the second item, Your Worship, is the motion for adjournment. Moved by I believe it was Councillor Cush, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's a big man. It was someone else.
I could be wrong, though.
You're not.
Okay, so we need to know who moved to come out of closed session, correct? Item 11, and that was who?
I believe I did, yeah.
I think you're right. And then the other one was, sorry, which was the other one? Adjournment?
That's
Was that Council Cook?
We'll be losing it.
Oh, this is adjournment.
But it's not on the minutes.
Interesting.
That's all you need, admin? Word?
Your worship, just bear with me. See, I don't have it. Yeah, your worship, that's good.
Okay. So is there any, other than that, any other missing errors or omissions on it? And with that, I'll accept a motion to move the minutes as amended. Councillor Prestidge.
Make a motion that the minutes of the August 17th, 2022 minutes be accepted as presented,
As amended.
or as amended.
Okay, motion on the floor from Councillor Prestidge. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. That'll bring us, we had no public hearings, no bylaws, no delegate, well, we have a delegation, but that's later. And that'll bring us to 6.1, advocacy letter to the Minister of Justice and the Solgen regarding victim services.
Are you going to come? Are you doing it? Okay.
Okay. Welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
So those of us, you guys who don't know Darlene and myself, Darlene is the board chair for Eagle Tower Victim Services, and I am the program manager for the unit. We service Whitecourt, Fox Creek, as well as most of Woodlands County area. So I want to give you guys a little bit of history as what has happened in the last few years with our program. I won't take up a lot of your time, but I'll give you the full version of basically what we've been going through as a unit and as a province for victim services. In 2019-2020, two MLAs, Angela Pitt and Nathan Newdorf, did a review of the service model for victim services across the province. The consultations were done with VSU units. Letters were written from boards and units to the province at that time, trying to communicate what we felt were the best needs and changes that would be beneficial to our units in rural Alberta. Changes were made to the Victims of Crime Fund that was growing substantially in the province at that time, and they included drug courts, paying Crown prosecutors and assisting alert out of that Victims of Crime Fund. So that basically ate up a lot of the funds that were accumulating for the Victims of Crime Fund. Our unit itself has not had any funding increases since 2008. We've been capped at $150,000 to run the unit in both communities and surrounding areas. Our unit fundraised for everything other than the wages for the last at least 7 years that I've been the program manager. So the province basically covers our wages, and anything beyond that is fundraised dollars, whether it's grant writing. Of course, the Woodlands County grant assists us huge, as well as the town of Whitecourt gives us per capita funding as well. APV-VSA, which is our provincial body, Alberta Police-Based Victim Service Association, was unfunded by the province somewhere in 2020. So that was our one voice across the province that they unfunded. In July, the redesign was announced in 2022, and during the holiday season, which was wonderful, and they explained the changes to our units. 62 police-based victim service boards will be dissolved and shutting down. The 4 boards will be created aligning with 4 districts of the RCMP. So there's basically the province is split into 4 for the RCMP. We are in WAD, so that is 17 units that we will be replacing. And then they will create one board for the entire 17 units. One board, 10 staff, 23 caseworkers will be taking care of WAD with these new changes. Our volunteers will be taking care of one of the 10 newly created board staff, and my current staff will be allowed to apply to as a caseworker position, possibly one in our unit. Maybe 1.5, we're not sure. So we did have a meeting with the MLA Martin Long last week. And I say we, Edson Hinton, Jasper, Whitecourt, met with him to see what are our next steps. Is there next steps? What can we do as an area to try to get the gaps that we see as rural community that could be a problem? And I guess that's where you guys come in. That's why we're here today, is to ask for support. I think rural Alberta gets left out a lot, and in many different areas. And with these changes, they're painting the brush across the province. There is some units that weren't working well. We recognize that, we know that. The model did need some changes, some updating. They haven't done that for a long time. But to make it into such a vast area, for us to be managed from one board, that probably will be in an urban center, and then we'll be left out of a lot of the conversation. We would suggest, and I think that after the conversation with our MLA, he suggested for some good suggestions, because when you want to make changes in government, it's important to have some suggestions moving forward. And we would suggest that aligning with the Crown areas, that works really well. I do have just a document that shows the Crown areas that we would be aligned with. And I think there's 14 in the province. And our Hinton Crown office would be Drayton, Edson, Grand Cache, Hinton, Jasper, Whitecourt. One board could service that area. We'd have 2 people from each community sit on that board and then manage the communities that way. That is our one suggestion to the province. The one other thing is that they're not planning on making any changes to 2024 because they're not prepared. They don't have anything put in place. They haven't applied for, they have a contractor hired now, and they haven't applied for even a board status for a nonprofit. So there's a lot of time that victim services units will be sitting in limbo, wondering what is going to be happening. We have boards across the province already shutting down. And then that means that our CMP members are going to have to take care of our victims of crime in those communities. So, is there anything?
Yeah, I'd like to add that, in our community in the last 5 months, we've seen 4 deaths. All of those deaths do not fall within the parameters of what this new program coming out would cover. So, because they're not victims of crime, they're just tragedies that happen within the community. And I think when you have rural communities and smaller communities, the public opinion is much stronger because it's a small community. So within days, your whole community can be affected because everyone kind of knows each other, you work together, you cross paths very frequently. In larger centers like Edmonton, Calgary, when something happens, it kind of stays in neighborhoods, right? So my concern is, and I've been a volunteer on victim services for over 10 years, is that what they're proposing, we're going to lose the ground zero services. So when something happens in our community, we're going to be waiting for someone from Grand Prairie to come here. And that person that comes from Grand Prairie doesn't even really know the layout of this community. So, how effective is that going to be? Now, Councillor Presswood sits on our board as well, and so we have a very strong board. We have really good people that are volunteering their time. There's a lot of governance that is given to the program, and it's very sad to think that that's all going to go away, and there won't be anything to replace it. So the letter that Woodlands has prepared, what I would humbly suggest is, number one, I think your framework of your letter is good, but I think you need to add in that a very strong wording about the concern that you have of how it's going to affect the communities. It's going to affect us in a very negative way. And as well, I think we need to make the suggestion, as Tina said, if there has to be a change and we aligned with the Crown's offices, I think it's manageable. Will it be as to the standard we have now? No, it wouldn't be. But it would be a lot closer to the standard we have now. Because if the new program rolls out as they propose, I really honestly believe that victim services within our community will basically be abolished. It'll be gone. And how do you find volunteers in our community that are going to be prepared at 3 a.m. to answer the phone and go to Grand Prairie? It's bad enough now that our advocates, who are again volunteers, who take close to 100 hours of their time just to be trained to be in that position, that they get up in the middle of the night and they go to that car accident and they deal with people who are at their absolute worst time in their lives, where they're not thinking rational and they're very emotional. And you know, we already, I think, as a country, are seeing mental health issues really bubbling to the surface. And I think what they're proposing now is going to take mental health to a level we have never seen. So I could go on for hours because I'm very passionate about it, as I'm sure you guys recognize, but I also know that this particular Woodlands County has always been super supportive of us, and I appreciate that. And so going forward, I would really hope that the letter that you've prepared, that you would juice it up a little bit and follow through with it. Like, we need to be on them steady because we do have a year to change people's minds, and sometimes that can happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Go ahead, council.
I didn't see it in here though, but is there discussion on an increase in funding from the Alberta government with the increased service area that these new zones are gonna create? And do they understand how much local fundraising occurs, right? The amount of fundraising that you guys have to do is supported locally, and I think, as you guys know, you're gonna have an incredibly tough time getting people in these small communities to do fundraising for people north of Grand Prairie as these zones go.
What the government has told us right now is there will be no fundraising, there will be no need, and there will be no increases.
Go ahead, council question.
Through the chair to council, and at our last Zone 3 meeting, I brought up victim services. The president of the RMA was not aware that they had done what they did, but he is very passionate about victim services. And I think you'll see the RMA start to push on this too. We'll have some more support there.
Councilor Dean?
Excuse me, I have chocolate all over my lips from the coffee company. So back to funding levels and kind of the lack of funding information that's within that document that they provided. Has there been any communication to you or anybody on your board what the province's overall reduction in spending is, or whether it's flat, or if they say that you guys aren't going to be local fundraising won't be necessary? Have they shared any numbers?
They told us that our community will still get the 150, but they haven't told us how many caseworkers will be in our community and how they will be paid. They haven't told us. They're still building the board that is going to be created. A lot of unanswered questions, but they did say that fundraising for our units will be no longer. We can keep our nonprofit alive and fundraise on that side for other things. We aren't sure what those are at this point because we serve victims of crime. It's not something that our board is interested in doing something else. So we don't have a lot of those answers yet.
Sure.
And I don't think they do.
Okay, and sorry, I had another follow-up number-driven question. So you described the area that you currently serve and the municipal partnership that you enjoy with Town of Whitecourt and with Woodlands County, do the other municipalities that you touch, do they make a contribution to your local board as well?
We have very little clients we have a little piece of the county of Greenview. We haven't had a client there for about 5 years. So any other areas that, Fox Creek, we have manpower from them, but nothing tangible, not funds. But our numbers there are quite low too. So the majority, which is Woodlands County and the town, are very supportive.
Thank you.
If I could add to that too, like a lot of times when we have approached, we did go to Fox Creek. When your community hasn't been touched with that tragedy, they don't understand what happens. So they are choosing to be reactive rather than proactive. Unfortunately, we've had a number of things over the years in Woodlands and Whitecourt that have, the need of victim services has been there, so people understand it. I'm sure that every one of you in this room knows of someone in the last couple of years that has had some sort of tragedy happen within their family. And so I think that's where there's a lot more support coming from the two larger municipalities because they're more affected by it.
Sure.
Councillor Dean?
And sorry, last question, but there's a provincial election looming, and if Paul McLaughlin wasn't aware of what was going on for redesign, I would suggest that there's lots of Albertans that are not, and perhaps that's a message that can be pushed to those people that make the decisions.
Councillor Wilhelm, go ahead.
How much of your operating budget comes from fundraising locally? Like you get 150 from the government, correct?
150, and we operate with a 260.
Okay, so 110,000 comes from fundraising.
Yeah.
I think that should be an important part of the message too, for them to understand that this current service level that you've been able to provide is only available through local fundraising, which will go to nil if they don't want to do fundraising. So
Yeah.
That's a good point.
for the MLAs or people in government who are strictly numbers based, that's an important thing to let them know, right? Almost 50% of your operating budget is fundraising.
Yeah.
Right.
Councillor Prestige?
Another thing you have to remember is the province is only funding for victims of crime. So like if there's death notifications or, as you say, car accidents, the province will not fund that. And that's where the fundraising comes in, is to pay for the stuff that the province won't pay for. So if we go with their model, they're saying we don't need that other arm of victim services. That is gonna be gone. And that, to me, is just as important as the victims of crime. If you have a family member that gets killed in a car accident, and the help that this group gives you is unbelievable. And it would be a shame to see that disappear.
I also did want to,
Yeah.
bring up one more suggestion, and it's for municipalities. In the document that you guys were provided, it said that municipalities over a $15,000 number could go municipal as well. So that is an option. When we were in meetings with Trent Forsberg and Minister Shandro, they said to caution us because when we apply, we do have to apply for that, and we might lose funding in areas that we aren't aware of. So I think that that's something that they don't want to see, because where they're saving most of their money is going to be processing the grants. The 62 grants will turn into 1 grant. And so if municipalities choose to go municipal, how would that look? We would not move out of the RCMP detachment. We would be staff of Woodlands County, the town, at a percentage, and the service level would stay the same. So that is also another option that was outlined in the documents.
Councillor Coulton?
Yeah, through the chair. Has there ever been any discussion
with the province on, you know, when you manage any of these things, the demographics play a big role. And what I'm hearing is that that hasn't seemed to have been in the discussions because they're painting everything with one brush. And so, you know, is that something that we should start to advocate for through the RMA and possibly spruce up this letter and indicate that there has been no recognition of that?
Well, and I know that as a board and as a program manager, we have written letters that said exactly that. They just were not acknowledged.
Okay, and I think I think that Darlene, your comments around mental health actually really hit home. Every board that I sit on, we're noticing upticks in issues around mental health. And I think people's coping mechanisms are at an all-time high for stress at the moment. So certainly opening a gap like this until 2024 is going to be disastrous for a community. And the idea of a community, I think, really is, you know, a community is not a line on the map. A community is a group of people that live there. That's what makes a community. And I can't think of a better example of you know, a group of people that care about their community and the people around them to provide those services. And I think you're really going to lose a lot by going to a more regional model like this. It just starts to disconnect, and I think you're right. We can certainly look at the letter, and we'll need a motion to this as well. And I think we might have one more Pembina district meeting coming up prior to the RMA, the fall session.
October 3rd, I believe.
So we may be able to get a resolution together to RMA on this. We can check, again, with a motion of council, but we may be able to get a resolution together to RMA. And there's probably other communities that already have it together. We only need one resolution. The RMA is member driven, so unless somebody tells them they gotta go after this, they won't go after it on their own. But I think it's definitely an avenue that needs to be pursued. So I just really want to thank you for all the work that you guys have done and the care and effort that you've put into the community. And when I say the community, I mean the people. So thank you. Are there any final questions? Did we get everything?
I believe so.
Okay. With that, I'll ask for a motion to, oh, sorry. I don't need that. This isn't a delegation. Sorry, we're going to pass this thing. Go ahead, Councilor Williams.
I was just gonna make a motion that council forward a strongly worded letter to Minister Shandro regarding the victim services redesign.
Okay, and we have a letter that's attached already, so that letter needs to be worked on yet?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with it being more wordy than that.
So what I heard, if I get this correct, speaking to your motion,
Yeah.
I'm accepting your motion. So speaking to the motion, I'm hearing adding the amendments or adding to the body of the letter, the negative effects on the communities that a regional model would have over a local model, correct? Dangerous gap in services and risks to mental health over that implementation period where you're getting some of the units shutting down at the moment. A suggestion to move to the Crown model instead of this, instead of going to that 4-zone regional model. And I think that's it.
Well, the elimination as well of the support for the non-criminal tragedies.
Okay, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, because a lot of people don't understand the distinction between the two. I
Yep.
mean, I sat on the board for probably 2 years and all of a sudden one day the light come on and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like literally I did not know that was not, like a car accident was not something victim services looked after. And, yeah, so a lot of people just don't realize that distinction. And, your worship as well, don't forget a motion for the resolution to RMA. I know how much clout that has if you have a body like that starts having this conversation, that's going to get the attention of the provincial government. That's a great suggestion.
Well, it's funny, you know, I've never been to a protest in my life until I became an elected official, and now I've been to 2. And it looks like there'll be more. So we still have a motion on the floor with those additions to it, so we accept those,
Yes.
those 4 items as a friendly amendment to your motion to include them. Anything from, and we'll do the letter as one motion, we'll do the resolution as a second. No comments on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Second one would be the motion to RMA based on looking into it on this item. Councillor Colvin.
I'll make a motion that we forward the information to RMA and see if they'll work on that as well.
Okay, so that, if I get the wording properly, it'll be to send a resolution to get passed at the Zone 3 meeting to go to the RMA Fall Assembly.
Fall assembly.
Yep. Is that your motion?
Yep, that's my motion. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Your worship, members of council, because you have a meeting on September 28th, if you can reword your motion to say that administration draft a proposed resolution for consideration for the zone meeting, and we'll bring it forth to the September 28th council meeting,
Okay.
if that's acceptable.
Yeah, that's acceptable. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Councillor Colvin. Speaking to the motion, Councillor Dean?
Yeah, in a roundabout way, I'm just curious, Councillor Prestige, at that last zone meeting, when you brought that up, was that just sort of in round table?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Good. And did you get, other than the president, were there many people nodding their head and understanding what you were talking about, or was it not so much?
I think there was, it was, I think a lot of people are just not aware of it, but they're in support of it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, okay, thanks.
As to the chair and council, there were a couple other tables that sat up and they were expressing the same concerns after Councilor Cressy brought it up.
Thanks.
Okay. Nothing further on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So they weren't an official delegation, they were more presenting it, so we don't need a motion for that.
You can have a motion to accept your delegation.
Okay, well, does anyone wish to make a motion to accept the delegate council?
I'll make a motion to accept the delegation from Victim Services.
Okay, thank you very much for coming, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. All right, that will bring us to 8.1. Joan.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. Before us, we have a subdivision time extension request for a subdivision on the northeast of 145910, west of the 5th. This is the first time extension request from the applicant. They just essentially are pretty much done their conditions, just run into a bit of contractor length of time trying to get them to come out. So just asking for an additional year before they can register the subdivision.
Okay. Any questions to administration on this one? Councilor Kush?
I'll just say, I mean, they're almost through this. There's no sense in, denying this and having put all that work into it and having, cut off at the 10 mile here. So make a motion that the council approve the request for time extension to register subdivision application 2021 SUB 08 to September 15th, 2023.
Okay. Thank you. Motion on the floor from Councilor Kush. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. That will bring us to policies. Sorry, Joan, that was anticlimactic. Welcome back.
Nice to see you, John.
We're just trying to scare her away.
Right? Okay, so this will bring us to asset management, item 8.2, policy 7101. We had this at the governance and priorities meeting. And Kara Kennedy,
Yeah,
welcome
good
and
morning,
go ahead.
Worship, members of council. Before you is the draft asset management policy that we did have discussion, and it was presented on September 7th at the GMP meeting. It's a higher level document that spells out the underlying principles that we'll be using to implement our asset management to meet the strategic goals of the county. Not much is, like, we didn't change anything to the document as it was presented before. I would like to address, Councillor Dean had mentioned, had questioned the level of service and the cost for that. So there is a definition of level of service in the document, and it does in there indicate level of, or cost is part of level of service. So when we get to the point that we're going to be defining our level of service, there will be a cost associated with that that you'll have for you to make decisions with.
Thanks. Okay. So everybody was there for GNP, for one of us, and do you have any questions?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Does anyone wish to counsel Prestige?
I'll make the motion that council adopt policy 7101, asset management as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Prestige. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That will bring us down to item 8.3, our assessment management capacity building cohort. Now, this was well, Carrie, you explain it, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, RMA, UMA, and IMA received some MAP grant funding from FCM, so they're putting on 4 series of training. So 2 of them are cohorts, and a beginner and an intermediate, as well as the elected officials training and some small group training. So administration wishes to apply to be a part of the cohort process. We're hoping we would be considered for the intermediate, but once you fill in the application, they base it on the readiness scale that we're at, and they put us into the appropriate group. This isn't a for sure thing, it's just an application, and depending, they try and group you within your region. So if there's a whole bunch in one region, they would do a cohort in that area. So if there's no one else around us, we may not get in, because they try and make it so that you're only driving certain distances and you're able to build those fundamental relationships with your neighboring municipalities. It's going to require some staff time. Obviously, there's 2 to 3 in-person meetings, and it starts in December and goes, I believe, until May. And the intermediate one will be working on levels of service and a communication plan. In order to apply to the program, we would need a resolution from council in your support. And so that's what's before you here is a resolution.
Okay. Any questions on this? Anyone wish to move right into it? Councillor Dean?
Yeah, I can. You're gonna force me to read this entire recommended action?
Oh, and I guess I should, Corinne was helping me this morning with some of this, like, that the first sentence there, the council approve administration, I guess is not required, so we could just skip that part, and administration would recommend that you just start reading from the now therefore.
Okay.
And it could be read all as one motion, not 1, 2, 3.
Don't need a hearing.
I didn't know.
hearing.
I was just gonna say.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so now therefore be it resolved. Number 1, that Woodlands County Council directs staff to apply for the asset management cohort program opportunity from the RMA, AUMA, and IAMA. Never heard of that one. Number 2, that Woodlands County commits staff and other personnel to participating in the asset management and cohort program to advance our asset management program. And number 3, that Woodlands County commits financial support from its budget towards the costs of this initiative for staff travel and accommodation.
Okay, I have one question about I'll accept the motion. The one question that I have is RMA, AUMA, are we still using the AUMA name, or should they have been referred to by AB Munis? I know,
On the application, on the template, they gave me that's what they had, so
I know that's still kind of their legal name until they, so okay, let's do it that way. If it's on the template, that's their thing, so
Okay.
we'll leave it at that. Counselor Wilhelm.
I do have a question. As Councillor Dean said, what is IAMA? I've never heard of that before.
it's Infrastructure Asset Management Alberta.
Okay.
And as an organization, we're involved with them, and they have 3 workshops a year, in-person workshops, so all the asset management geeks get together, and it's like they bring in special guest presentations and whatnot, so you learn. It's a really good opportunity. I've made friends at both of them that I've gone to so far, so, yeah.
Okay, anything further? That I'll call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Item 8.4, policy 6902, corporate sponsorship. That is going to be Economic Development Officer Bert Roach. Welcome, Bert. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council. Good to be here in front of you again today. So, following up on Kara's lead, the item in front of you today, 6902, was also presented at the Governance and Priorities meeting earlier in September on the 7th. And the policy was put forward at that time to come to council. We have added a second recommendation, and that is just that the related policies that are in our existing policy list, there's a list of 4 there that could be repealed as they would be replaced by the governance and the guidance of the new policies. So those are the recommendations. Just to do a very quick review, the county contributes corporate sponsorship support for a variety of community initiatives and services, and we encourage community building, and through these we also make Woodlands County a more caring and safer community. So those are the purpose for the policy. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here a bit, but the purpose for the policy itself was to establish guidelines to provide consistent and efficient process to address requests for sponsorship support that is non-grant related. So we have other existing grant programs within the county. And this would be the policy that would govern the non-grant requests.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to administration on this one? No, we've seen it at the previously as well, so with that, I'll accept a motion if somebody wishes to, and we'll have to break this up into the two recommended actions as separate motions. We'll pass the new one first and repeal the old one second. Councillor Coken?
I will make the motion that council adopt the new policy 6902 corporate partnership as presented.
Okay, very good. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Who's gonna get the second one?
I can do that.
Councillor Williams.
I'll make a motion that council repeals the following policies. Policy 1207, promotional items. Policy 6203, partnership support. Policy 6307, donations, and policy 7004, 4-H club demonstration public speaking awards.
Okay, thank you. Motion's accepted, and do we have any discussion on that motion? None? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. All right. Whitecourt, thank you, Bert. So this will be the Whitecourt Whitecourt and District Chamber of Commerce events and meetings. The Whitecourt and District Chamber of Commerce events and meetings. Bert, you want to do this one?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the recommendation before you today, council accept these items for information and that we forward them as discussion items to the 2023 budget deliberations for consideration. The background on this item, we are currently a platinum member of the Whitecourt and District Chamber of Commerce, and that's at a cost of $1,500 per year. But with that, we do get a wealth of chamber benefits. So that includes complimentary trade fair booth, 2 passes to the annual chamber golf tournament. We have sponsorship in our logo on the chamber fan out and at all of the Whitecourt Chamber events during the 1-year period for the membership. We also have a discount through the Paywork software, which we use internally, and there are some other benefits that come through the Alberta Chamber of Commerce and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. We have Woodlands job postings, our request for proposal postings, and event information, which we include in all of the chamber member fan notes, which come out weekly on each Friday. And we have Woodlands County also invited to provide updates along with Whitecourt and Mayor Thorpe at all of the regular chamber member meetings, which are usually held the second Wednesday of the month. And there is actually a chamber meeting today from 11:30 to 1 p.m. It's one of the regular chamber member meetings. So in addition to that, we also have to consider, and this is what was considered last fall going through the budgeting process, is that we are in that economic recovery plan process. And so as a result, the costs of some of the chamber events that we had classically participated in, we weren't able to have the funds available for them. So we had opted out of being in a couple of them for this year. And this is why it comes forward as a budget item. The very exciting thing is that post-pandemic, we're seeing a return to in-person meetings, and we're seeing a couple of the chamber events from the past come back onto the schedule with really good attendance, and we're seeing some new opportunities come forward as well. So attached is a letter from the chamber with a list of the events that we have for this year, and then we have information on the upcoming economic forum and the trunk or treat event. And that takes me through the bulk of the RFD. One other item that may want to be considered today is that in addition to having solid and consistent representation at the chamber member meetings, there may be the opportunity for council to create some additional networking opportunities with the chamber, and there may be some updates on that and with how we also connect with other members of our business community.
Okay, any questions to admit on this? I got, go ahead, Councilor Dean.
Thanks, Mr. Reed. Just through the chair, back to Bert. Bert and I had a brief chat after I'd read this RFD, and I had meant to bring to his attention a conversation I had with the Vice President of the Chamber. I just met with her informally, but we got talking about the county's representation at the meetings, and it has changed because we moved our council meetings from a Tuesday to a Wednesday. And so formerly, John would be at those meetings and be able to give that update. Bert gives the update, and he does a very good job of keeping the business community abreast of what's going on. But it's also important that elected officials get a chance to network with those folks. They want to be able to ask questions. And I know the last one that you and I attended, the meeting was over, but you had 3 or 4 people that were just chatting and asking questions. And those connections are important. And we're not going to be able to do that because we need to have our meetings on Wednesdays unless they were to change their date. And I'm not sure that's going to happen. So Louise had suggested that the county could look at hosting a networking event. And that's what I gave to Bert yesterday, and that's something that they're gonna see, and bring back to council to see if that is something that's palatable to council. So thanks.
Councilor Cush.
Just, I guess through to CAO, on the days when the chamber is having the meetings, if it conflicts with, 'cause it's not all the time that it conflicts with our council meetings, but if we end up running where they're kind of on the same days, is it possible to maybe schedule a light meeting that day so that representation can make the, on days that are possible, so we can try to make the chamber events too?
Your worship, through to Councillor Cush, I guess my understanding is their schedule pretty well mirrors our council meeting schedules. However, the business of the county would go first, and depending on the items on the agenda, would just continue going forward with that. However, nothing precludes the council of taking a longer than scheduled break from 11:30 to 1, use it 11:30 to 1, so that you could participate in there, if that's the wishes of council as well.
Okay. It's an option. I'm gonna ask one question of Bert. So within these programs and everything, we talked as well about the upcoming,
Economic forum?
thank you, the economic forum. Is that included in this anywhere? I don't see it specifically spelled out, or we're gonna talk about
Yes,
that
so
later?
as part of the attachments, I believe there should be this page.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Okay.
this is the information on the economic forum. Now, in past years, we have had the Reeve give about a 15-minute presentation or so with a full county update, and that has mirrored what the other two municipalities have done as well. The Whitecourt, town of Whitecourt is of course a platinum member and well represented as well, but it is a district chamber, so the town of Mayorthorpe, they have some involvement, and they are also a platinum member, and so we have the three municipal reports that come forward at each meeting, as well as often a community features and an Alberta labor report as well. So those are the opportunities. On the economic forum, my understanding is that this year, yes, there is the opportunity for each municipality to do a 10 to 15-minute presentation. It certainly makes, I think, much more sense that if that is the way that the county wishes to proceed, and we're there to present, we definitely should be an event sponsor in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. When is this event again?
On October 19th for the Economic Forum. And that was the initial scheduling conflict we had with this one. There is actually the EDA Ministry Dinner is the same evening, but we'll be addressing that at the upcoming Economic Development meeting.
October 19th, I'm just getting up my schedule here. But we have a governance and priorities meeting fairly quickly here on tomorrow? It's tomorrow, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Can we add a brief discussion about attending this to the governance and priorities meeting, or do you wanna? I don't know where our we're tapped out on our budget for this at the moment, right?
The unfortunate thing at the moment is that we just, in the existing economic development operational budget, we just don't have the opportunity to participate at that $5,000 level. Certainly to look at one of those other options, that there are some possibilities. We can move that back to the ECDEV committee and maybe move some things around and see what we can find. But again, sort of aligning itself with that corporate sponsorship policy. If it's a $5,000 or more item, it should come to council.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Cush, go ahead.
Just another quick question. At our governance and priority meeting, we mentioned that our honorarium budget is considerably lower, so far to where we had budgeted, given we hadn't come up with the increase. Given, I understand the importance of this here and making a presentation. Is it something through administration we could maybe move funds from one budget over to be able to make the requirements for this, actually get the platinum membership and stuff like we do?
Through your worship to Councillor Cush, council could decide to move funds. There is funds available on honorarium, and so if council makes a motion to move those funds, they could do so.
just as an option.
Okay. Are we okay having a conversation with it at governance and priorities tomorrow? Well, I'm gonna make a motion then that we add it to the agenda for the governance and priorities meeting tomorrow, with the blessing of council, and I'll put that on the floor, so is there any discussion around that? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
So your worship, so now you're tabling this till the September 28th meeting?
Just that one event, I think the intent is the one event, because we don't,
I think we're just tabling it till tomorrow, are we not? GMP's tomorrow?
No, because the governance and priorities
We
committee
can't
only
pass
makes
motions.
recommendations to council. So you're tabling this till September 28th.
okay,
I'm not sure, your worship, what's the purpose of having a discussion at the governance and priorities meeting versus having this discussion now? There is funds available if you make that motion to transfer the required amount. If the desire is to be a corporate sponsor or X amount of dollars, administration has indicated that there are funds that can be transferred.
okay. So what, oh, I'm sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
I guess to add to that as well, I had a question to Bert before about the trunk and treat event, which we didn't participate in last year, but I mean, the entry fee into that event is tiny for one. There is a time commitment, obviously, for staff to participate and for counselors to volunteer at it, but I think the chamber is an incredibly important part of Woodlands County's community, and lots of residents, lots of our ratepayers are part of this association. So I think we need to look at supporting them a bit more in the future, even if that does entail increasing the budget for economic development, to make sure that happens.
Okay, just speaking to that, the only issue is that as long as we have headroom, the problem that we were running into in the past is once you've, got a budget laid out and you continue to add to it, that's the issue, and I guess that's why I wanted to put it to the governance and priorities meeting, because I wanted some time to figure out what level of sponsorship, or if we should do it, because we're so close to being in a better place than we were, and I don't wanna start going down a road that takes us in a different direction. So, Councillor Dean?
Yeah, I agree, and I think I'm understanding CEO Frank's suggestion that from a mechanical point of view, we can discuss this now or we can discuss it tomorrow. But I concur with you, Mr. Reeve, that if this was presented in a way that shows the budget money moving from one to another, what options are, that's what I'd like to see in order to make a good decision. I don't think I'm equipped right now to make a good decision.
So your worship, a motion to table this item to the September 28th meeting, and we'll provide that information on a high level or detailed information at the Governance and Priorities Committee tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
Is there a deadline for sponsorship that we won't be able to meet by September 28th?
So the sponsorship deadline, the initial deadline for the Economic Forum has already passed. They did have a soft date of September 1st, but in conversation with the Chamber, they're quite willing to see us come on as a sponsor at any point in time that we would have approval to on our end. So the event isn't until October 19th, so worst case scenario, we might miss out on being on some of the advertising or some of the pre-event promotion, but we would certainly have the county logo and the presence at the event.
You'll communicate to them that we're in discussion about providing additional funding for it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So to use that term again, from a mechanical point of view, can we amend your motion, or do we want to rescind it?
No, if I get the mechanics correct, the motion's okay to, because this is gonna still go to G&G tomorrow, but we have to have a motion to, is it table or postpone? Because we're gonna postpone this to a specific date, correct?
That's correct.
So if we're tabling it, that just has to be dealt with by the end of the meeting, I think, under a procedural bylaw.
Table is actually a missing definition in the bylaws, so.
There is a definition of postpone. And it's,
I think postpone, you have to attach a specific date to it, if I
I
remember
believe you're
correctly.
correct.
So let's use.
We'll just verify.
Verify. You're probably faster than I am. That
Specific time or date,
is postponed?
correct.
Still got it. Okay. So, we're looking for a motion to postpone, and sorry, our next meeting is at what?
September 28th.
28th. So, a motion to postpone this item. Until September 28th, that's what we need, and then we're good from mechanics.
So-
Councilor Dean.
I'm sorry. I'll move that council postpone item 8.5 from our current meeting agenda to the September 28th meeting, regular council meeting.
Thank you. Motion's accepted. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried. Okay, that brings us on to 8.6. Mr. Allen's letter. Andre.
Your worship, members of council, in 2020, we had a culvert washout on Township Road 624, which is a dead end east of Range Road 73. In 2020, we had high water flows. The Athabasca breached its bank, and this culvert is located on a non-flowing, essentially an oxbow of the Athabasca, so it washed out the culvert. The culvert was unable to be replaced in 2020 due to the amount of water in that. In 2021, the province changed the application process for approvals, and essentially after that, this culvert fell off the radar. In 2022, the property owner called to get the culvert installed or replaced. We did proceed, get the approvals. It was replaced, I think, early June of this year. Since then, the property owner, Mr. Ellens, has requested that his tax penalties of $91.50 be waived due to the time it took to replace the culvert.
Okay. Any questions to it? I got one quick question to administration. So did the taxes bill has been paid except for the $91.50, or it's all outstanding?
Your worship, that is correct. He paid his taxes the day we replaced the culvert.
Okay.
And administration's recommendation is that council denies a request for tax penalties by not waiving the penalties or reimbursing the penalties. That would set precedent for future requests.
Okay. I'll go with Councilor.
He is first. He can go first. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I guess I'm left-eyed on.
Yeah, no.
Councilor Culkin.
Through the chair, and I'm going to direct this to both council and Mr. Frank, because that would be the proper way to do it. I'm a little disappointed in the way that this is put in front of us, because I got involved in this probably shortly, or not shortly after, but early this spring, after this particular resident, and he was very upset because he had asked for information and some clear understanding of when this was going to be dealt with, and it wasn't happening. And when I brought it to the table, there was an admission that, oh, you know what, that completely fell off the radar, which to me says, yeah, okay, we made a mistake, and you know, now we're dealing with it. And the only reason that that happened was because Mr. Ellis chose to take the action that he did. There seems to be a consistency in this, in a lot of the things that have been happening here. And if I sit in a leadership role here, and I'm the guy that's going to be painted with a brush in my community, because there's a lack of respectful conversation and a lack of our organization treating the clients that we have the way that they should, I have a problem with that. And this is consistent. This is something that we are historically looking at, has been happening in our community, where either it's litigation or actions like this that bring it to the attention of council. And I am quite sick of that. And so I believe Mr. Ellens acted very respectfully. He paid his taxes. He told us what he was going to do. The only precedent that we set here, if we allow this to happen, and I direct this at this council, the only precedent we set here is that our organization can work with impunity and not respect the complaints or the service that we're providing, to just do what they want, and then we thumb their nose at them and say, sorry, you know what, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. And I don't want to see that happen anymore. So for me, I would like to make, and I will make this motion, I will make a motion that we refund Mr. Ellens for his $91.50. And I would also like to send him a letter that says, thank you for bringing this to our attention, because it will give us an opportunity to figure out how we're going to make sure that we set this organization on a path where we have element of respect that we have with each other as the leadership and the community.
Okay.
Your Worship, just so that we're clear, Councillor Skokin's motion is very lengthy, so I understand the narrative, right? So I believe it's, you're asking that the motion is to refund the taxes in the amount of $91.50 to, which there's gotta be a.
Yeah.
Do we not have a tax roll on this?
In his letter, he has the three.
Yeah, that's the three.
Yeah, so you'd have to do that. And then furthermore, you can also indicate that you would, that a
I would
letter
like
of
to-
apology or acknowledgement.
I think
it's a letter of
I think I don't necessarily think I, as a council member, would want to say that's an apology. It's acknowledging that the action that he took. So if you could craft a letter in that way, I think that would be adequate at this point.
Okay, just before we get into the exact crafting of this motion, the outstanding penalty, so when you say refund, we're refunding money that's been paid, so are we just canceling? We're just canceling a penalty or waiving the penalty? Is that better?
Your Worship, we would waive the penalty
Waive,
at council's discretion.
So, on that end, then.
I will make the motion that we waive the penalty.
And it's for the following account numbers: 184237,
Yep.
34694, 34695, in the amount of 9150. Total in the amount totaling 9150.
Okay,
That's exactly it. Thank
Alright.
you.
and do you wish to have do you want the letter of acknowledgement? You got it already?
Yeah, well, your workshop, I
You
would
wanna
just
do
do,
motions?
yeah, that's what I would.
That's what I'm asking.
Recommend.
Okay, so I'm taking this as the first motion, which is to waive the penalty on the taxable number and the amount. So I'm accepting that motion. It's on the floor. Councillor Williams.
Councillor Cook pretty much said what I was gonna say before. I agree 100%. It's so frustrating. Like I think he's been more than reasonable in only not wanting to pay the late fees. I'm surprised he wanted to even pay his taxes down there for that year. That's so frustrating. And even the recommendation that we deny the request, I don't believe that would set a precedence. I think that the recommendation maybe should have been to refund that. So I agree with Peter, and I'd be willing to make the next motion.
Okay.
I just wanted to, just to the motion, we're talking about setting the precedent. If you read the letter, this has been an ongoing process for just about 2 years. So, I mean, at some point, there gotta be some accountability on the county also for, our part of the delays here too.
Councillor Prestige and then Councillor Dean.
I'm a strong believer, and I've said this before in council. If you don't want the complaints from residents, don't give them a reason to complain. So we have to do better.
Councillor Dean.
Thank you. Just, I'm looking for a timeline of when the culvert was actually replaced. The only dates I see in either the RFD or Mr. Allen's letter is July 29th, but I think that was the date that was on the letter that he received. So when did the project actually take place?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, I believe it was in June of this year.
In June of this year, and did I read that he came and paid his taxes on the day the culvert was replaced?
That's correct.
So how is there a late fee?
Because after the deadline.
And the deadline, July 1st? June 30th is the
30th.
deadline, I think,
So
but the.
It could have been the first week of July then,
No.
right around
I
that.
think it was the first week of
So
July.
it was very, very close anyway. Yeah, I have to concur with Councillor Williams. I'm not sure why we were recommended to not waive this.
Okay, we still have a motion on the floor. Anything further? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Part two.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to craft a letter that acknowledges that we understand that we erred in doing business the way that we did. And that we will be looking into trying to change our practices in the future. I don't know exactly how you would word that, but
Your worship, members of council, and again, not because we are live streaming this and those motions, we have to capture
They have
the
to be
motions.
concise.
So if the motion is to draft or to send a letter to Mr. Ellens in acknowledging our error, we can do that.
I think that's a fair way to start, so that would be the motion.
That's your motion?
Yep.
To draft a letter to Mr. Ellens.
To Mr. Ellens to acknowledge the error that we made.
Okay, fair enough. That motion is accepted. Councillor Wilhelm?
I just, through the chair to Councillor Colgan, you had mentioned earlier that you had, or earlier on when you were talking, that you had wanted the letter to say that we supported his, the way that he went about to do this. And I just want to comment on that. Like, I mean, I understand I understand sending a letter apologizing that this was a mess up on our part and that the fee probably should have been waived or never been implemented, but I as a council member don't want residents refusing to pay their taxes just because they didn't get a service that they wanted. Like, I mean, I agree we made a mistake here and that we should rectify it, but I don't want to say to residents, if you don't like what we're doing, stop paying your taxes and just because we screwed up. I mean, we need to not screw up essentially, but I don't want to go out and tell a resident, hey, you did the right thing by not paying your taxes. You know, we rectified it, we're going to fix the problem after the fact and then fix it so it never happens again. But I want this to be an abnormal thing, not a normal thing. I don't think we want to tell a resident we supported that not paying your taxes. I mean, just because you had mentioned that earlier, so that's all I wanted to comment on.
Councillor Cloken?
Well, I think that's why I think we just acknowledge that we made a mistake.
And I guess I can say something to this too. I mean, I've always, in working with business and everything else, I've long said I want the organization, or I'm hoping that the organization provides services more like a business. And the best measure, because every business, no matter how good they are that you deal with, every business makes a mistake somewhere along the line. There's things that happen. And the measure of good organizations, good businesses is not what they do when everything's going well. It's how they respond to things when they're not going well. So I think in a lot of ways we've done pretty well, but this one, anyways. With that, the motion is on the floor, and is there anyone else? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Let's take a quick break here and come back at 11 o'clock. I'm just going to wait. 8.7.
Good to go.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are at 8.7, and that's the lot lease expansion proposal. So that's gonna be Andre.
Your worship, members of council, due to demand, administration prepared an RFD for the Airport Advisor Committee, identifying that there were properties on the south side of Apron 3 and Taxiway A that requested additional leased land, which is available. Attached to the RFD identifies the areas that could be leased to adjacent property owners or leaseholders. The frontage would allow for additional area to park multiple aircraft, improve access to the taxiways. And if tenants or owners did lease additional land, then the recommendation was made that there would be no building allowed other than pads, could be concrete pads or rig mats, that type of thing. The Airport Advisor Committee recommended to council that the Woodlands County Council provide frontage lot leases for tenants on the south side of Apron 3, being made available at the lease rate of $1 per square meter, with subletting not being allowed. And if one of the adjacent property owners or leasers did not choose to lease additional land, no one else would be able to lease that in front of their lots.
Any questions to admit on this one? Councillor Dean.
No questions, but Airport Advisory Committee, we're fortunate enough to have a tour of the airport facility at our last committee meeting, so this was identified at that time. And just to give you a visual, it's basically a grassed area between the apron and their lot, their building or whatever. So nobody's going to come in there and use that land, and so it seemed pretty straightforward to us.
Okay. You're aware on there's a couple, but one specifically that you've got marked out here in red. It's like a 5-foot drop off into it. It's not really. Okay. Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair to Andre, at our airport advisory meeting, we decided that we thought it was a good idea to lease them. But one thing we didn't talk about is how long are the leases for? Are they a yearly lease, or is it renewed every 5 years, or have we decided what kind of lease we're gonna do?
Through the chair to Council Prestige, our typical leases at the airport are on a 5-year term, but we can set those for any particular amount of time. I would not recommend any more than 5 years.
So we can, like, if they wanna lease it just for 1 year, then we can tailor the lease to match what the
Correct.
the resident, or not the resident, okay.
Question for admin. So even the leases on the lots with buildings built on them are not beyond 5 years?
They are, some of them are 20 years, but renewed every 5 years.
Yeah, they're a 20-year lease with a 5-year renewal clause that adjusts for rates for fees, the lease fee.
Okay. All right, does anyone wish to make a motion?
Just one more question to administration. Just like, say the one area that Reed Burrows was talking about, where you have the drop, and a lot of this here is kind of grassed area. If somebody released one of these spots and say put asphalt or something kind of where so they can actually park, how is that going to affect the runoff for stuff, the water in the area? I'm assuming that that's a lot of where the drainage from some of those aprons are gonna go.
Through the chair to Councillor Cush, written in the lease would be that if the leaser wants to do any work, they would have to do it in consultation with the county, and we would identify what the grades would be and what the drainage pattern should be.
Councillor Kulka?
Yeah, I guess, I spend a lot of time going through, and this is probably going on to some of the other, parts of this, and I am not an airport person, I don't understand that stuff as well as I do, but one of the things that I did, get out of this especially from the consultants, stuff that they did, is that, there really hasn't been a solid, good structure plan for a long period of time that's been put in place, and because some of the things that are out there right now are not in compliance. And so this is showing us that, there's some things that are going to be in compliance and to what the use is going to be. So my question to this particular lease situation is if that lot is not adequate for the purpose that it is designed for, and somebody leases it, and then we start putting all of these conditions on, I don't think that's really good planning. So I'm just wondering that, if the lots meet the standard, then fine, but if it's in a hole where you can't park a plane, why are we even offering it up for lease?
Councillor Dean?
I hear what you're saying, Councillor Cook, I think in that situation is the leaser of the existing parcel just wouldn't lease that part. It's just there's some people, they have an expanse of land in front of them that they'd like to use for storage or, parking of various things. So some are gonna work and some aren't. But by the same token, your comment about, a comprehensive master plan is well taken, and I can't speak on behalf of the committee because we haven't had this discussion, but we've only met a couple of times, and I think it goes without saying that we want to have a look at the existing master plan and see if it needs to be tweaked and get something that we can bring back to council that everybody's in agreement for.
Mr. President?
Through the chair, where the 5-foot ditch basically is, we had spoke at our meeting about that, and to get across the ditch to where they could park their aircrafts, they would have to put a culvert in and a road across, and that would be at the leaser's expense.
Councillor Cush?
Okay, well, I'll go with the recommendation here. Make a motion that as recommended by the Airport Advisory Committee, that the Woodlands County Council provide frontage lot leases for tenants on the south side of Apron 3 being made available at the lease rate of $1 per square meter with subletting not being allowed.
Okay, motion on the floor from Councillor Cush. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Item 8.8, Apron Roadway designation.
Your worship, members of council, a while back, council closed 3 roadways that were on the air side of the airport as part of redesignating the air side to fit conventional airport operations. We had HM Aero Consulting come in, do some surveying, reviewed the operation of the airport, came to the August 16th Airport Advisory Committee, did a presentation, and the recommendations were that Apron 3 be redesignated as private taxiways E and G, and the 3 closed roadways being redesignated as F1, F2, F3. As part of that, they also looked at the requirements to meet TP 312, which is the regulations for the airport. The maneuvering surfaces in this report do not meet the thresholds to be designated as taxiways, but a way around that is to reclassify them as private taxiways. And then as time allows, those taxiways would be upgraded to meet the requirements for TP 312. As far as the meeting the requirements for private taxiway, the requirements would require that the center line be painted on those taxiways and that retro reflective signage be installed in specific areas. To date, we have painted the center line, which was done when the runway was being painted. We do have the budget within the roadway redesignation budget to purchase and install the signs. When they reviewed the redesignation, they provided 3 options with costs associated with that to meet the AGN 2 requirements in relation to TP 312, ranging from $10,000 to designate them as private taxiways. I believe it's 1 point some odd million to upgrade to a certain point, and then the 2.3 million to upgrade to the full TP 312, which would include improving the PL rating and ensuring that everything's up to the required standards so that Apron E could be extended all the way to the far end as a parallel taxiway.
Councillor Dean, you had a question?
Yeah, and a comment. Thanks, Andre. That's what he's referring to. I think you guys can see that table, the redesignation options. This report would be utilized in revising a master plan. So, at some point, we'd like to get to scenario 2 and then, hopefully to scenario 3. We can't do it right now. But you can see the difference in cost is 10,000 to 1.9 million.
Councillor Koken.
I'm glad we had this conversation last night, because one of the things that became very apparent when we had the SightLink conference, and this is something that has really changed my view about the airport, is that is one of the major resources that we currently underutilize because we don't have the use that's there. So for me, whoever got commissioned this study it did a really good job, because it gives me a little bit of idea for somebody who doesn't understand airports, that in order for us to get to a point where we are going to entertain having more air traffic and bigger and different air traffic and more activity there, we should be going to scenario 3. And so from a budget and a council perspective, I think what we really need to look at then is, first of all, have a conversation of how are we going to get to scenario 3, and exactly, what do we need now and what are we going to need in the future, and possibly start setting some reserves aside when we're able to do that to get to that point.
Councillor Dean?
Yeah, and I think I could speak on behalf of the committee. They'd be saying hallelujah right now. There are items within that original master plan that is, I don't know, 12 years old, that we still haven't achieved. Doesn't mean we can't, but we still haven't got them. Like, for example, fuel service. So, you know, I appreciate that comment, Councillor Colkin. The committee really would like to have a look at the master plan and try and continue to move the airport forward, and that's going to take money without question. So reserves are one way, you know. Hopefully our partners at the province will help us out with some grants, but some of this we're going to have to do on our own for sure.
I've just got a question here. The scenario 3 talks about going to widening E1 to 15 meters to get an aircraft group number 3A. OMGWS up to 9 meters. What is OMGWS again?
I'm out.
Sorry,
Might have to Google that.
I don't recall off the top of my
Okay,
head.
and then if scenario 3, that's kind of the highest level standard, does that mean aircraft group number 3 is our critical aircraft at the airport? And what is taxiway alpha aircraft group number at the moment? Because if the airport master plan originally calls for, well, there's an option there when the VOR gets decommissioned that eventually that area there is to become a parallel taxiway. So if Alpha, and I think Alpha has a pavement load rating of 10.4,
Yes.
and the PLR in that black section there is 4, and then the new stuff is 6. So aircraft group number 3 on that new section to be designated, I think Alpha's a higher standard than aircraft group number 3, is it not?
I believe the aircraft 3, 2.39 million, will upgrade it to 3, and that will widen it enough and allow the electrics to come in. So it will handle those aircraft as a 3. The 2 will handle the Beechcraft we have coming in, the King Airs, those type of aircraft.
Okay. I'm trying to get the numbers for the different aircraft group ratings, because that's not specified in here, so I'd like to know before I vote on anything, what aircraft group number is an Electra?
If I recall correctly, the consultants told us the 3.
Okay. Councilor Dean?
And just to reiterate, you know, that the recommended action is to go with scenario 1. So we're some ways out before we'll consider 2 or 3. So if there's no other questions, I'd move that Woodlands County Council approve the redesignation of Apron 3 to Aprons E and G, and that the 3 closed roadways be redesignated as private aprons F1, 2, and 3 as identified within the CAO Report Apron 3 redesignation options.
Okay, motion on the floor from Councilor Dean. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we have airport leases, item 8.9.
Your worship, members of council, the Airport Advisory Committee requested that administration prepare an RFD on lease rates in comparison to our 2 closest competitors, being Edson, Slave Lake. Edson lease rates are $1.70 per square meter for all types. Slave Lake has 3 rates, $1.40 for private, $2.25 for commercial, and $4.95 for non-aviation. Woodlands CYZU lease rates are $2.75 per square meter, which is the highest in Alberta, comparable to Grand Prairie Airport. Administration looked at a number of ranges of lease rates, did a comparison on the reduced rates, which is attached on the spreadsheet. Given that Slave Lake Edson are the direct competitors for CYZU, administration identified that private aviation lease rate should be $1.80 per square meter, commercial $2.10 per square meter, non-aviation $4.50 per square meter. The impact on the reduction of those lease rates is, at the current rate, is $9,127.78. However, if we had one more industry move in or aircraft company, then that reduction in revenue would be offset. The recommendation is that, as recommended by the Airport Advisory Committee, that Woodlands County Council approve lease rates for CYZU that reflect private aviation at $1.80 per square meter, commercial $2.10 per square meter, and non-aviation at $4.50 per square meter, effective January 1, 2023.
Okay. Any questions to admin? Councilor Push?
I have one question through the chair there. It says currently $275 is what we were charging for all lease types. If we go with our non-aviation going up to $450, is that going to impact many of the businesses out there, or?
Through the chair to Councilor Cush, I don't think it'll impact anyone out there at this point in time.
I just got one question. So on the private side, do we have any private lots out there? And if there are, where are they designated?
Your worship, I believe there are 2 private lease rates out there.
Do we have any future?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Anyone wish to make a motion? Councilor Wilhelm.
Motion that Woodlands County Council approve lease rates for CYZU that reflect private aviation, $1.80 per square foot, commercial $2.10 per square foot, non-aviation $4.50 per square foot, or square meter, sorry about that, I'll say that again. Private aviation, $1.80 per square meter, commercial $2.10 per square meter, non-aviation $4.50 per square meter, to be effective January 1st, 2023.
Okay. Councilor Dean?
Just speaking to the motion, you know, I want to be really clear with council that the concept of lease versus own at an airport, I don't have a good enough understanding for whether this is the right long-term direction for us to go, or it's something that we might want to consider changing. So these lease rates would change, but in the planning of the overall master plan, I'm sure the conversation about lease versus own will come up in that as well. So I just want to put that out on the table for folks to hear.
Okay. So we still have a motion on the floor. Anything further? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
Your worship, just for council's information, a schedule of fees will come back to council at the next meeting to formally adopt that, because it is part of the schedule of fees.
Okay, thank you. We have no correspondence, so we'll go right into council reports and questions. We'll start with Councilor Williams.
A couple meetings, yesterday we had a Ag Service Board meeting. That's very good, as usual. Went through quite a lot. there's gonna be kicking off club route surveys, so residents are wondering why county employees are walking in their place. They have sent out a notification. Some people are on a call list, so they're gonna be making phone calls before they go, so trying to avoid frustration there. We set a tentative date for the Egg Service Board supper that everyone's in, all the council invited to. That's March 3rd, 2023, if anyone's interested in marking that in their calendar. We went through the Family Farm Award, Beautification Awards. I believe we're still looking for a Pioneer Award recipient, so if anyone knows any of those, they can nominate. And then I also attended an Egg Society meeting. Most of it was to go over how the hoedown went. They said it's one of the most successful ones they've had in recent memory, so that was really good. They actually came out above their costs, so they didn't lose money this year, so that was pretty good to hear. 650 people attended the free breakfast on Saturday morning, so that was pretty good. Yeah, I think that's about all.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. Any questions to Councillor Williams? All right, Councillor Preston.
It's been a fairly slow late summer for me, but I attended the landfill meeting, and something that's come up is as the landfill pile gets smaller at the top, there's not enough room for the public and the commercial to dump together. So what they've done is put 2 bins just off to the left of the weigh scale there that residential can dump in them, and then when it's full, they get a truck and haul it up to the top. One thing that was my concern was, their 40-yard bins are so pretty high. And I asked them, what do you do when people can't reach it? And they said there would be help there for them. But Councillor Cush phoned me and said he had to help 2 people do it. Elderly people with SUVs that can't stand in the box of the pickup and throw it in. So that is something I'll bring up at our next landfill meeting. But I think it's a good way to go. They just have some infrastructure to build a ramp so people can do it. It keeps people off the top. One pet peeve of mine is you back in there and you get nails in your tires all the time. So this way it'll be a cleaner operation. We had our airport advisory meeting, which was really good. We had it at the airport. We did a tour of the airport. Some people had never been out there before, and it gave us a really good understanding, especially with the report that we got from consultants. As we just mentioned, some of the things that we discussed there. And we had our first Blue Ridge Community League meeting since July, I think, or June. So some of the problems going on there is our hall is beginning to deteriorate. We have a bunch of mold and stuff in the basement. We also, where the community league owns where the Blue Ridge Boxing Club is, it's a 2-stall garage with a lot in behind the hotel. So we're contemplating selling that. There's somebody interested in buying it, taking that money to fix our hall property. So it's a work in progress. And other than that, it's been a pretty good summer.
Okay, any questions, Councillor Prestige? Yeah, I got a phone call as well from Councillor Cush on the access to the bins. And I know down at the transfer station, they've got kind of a nice gantry built where you can take a couple steps up and get pretty close to them. So maybe it'll be even bringing something like that in there for the short term.
Well, the reason they gave us that they didn't do it already is they don't know if this is gonna work, so it's kind of an experiment to see if it's gonna work before spending a bunch of money on infrastructure.
Okay. All right, Councillor Cush.
Well, yeah, so I had the Anthony Gordon Memorial golf tournament went to, first time attending that. It was a lot of fun. I met a lot of people from the area, from the town of Whitecourt. We did some chatting there and other business members and stuff around, so it was a really good time. Seemed to be very well attended. Had an ensemble ag meeting, just basically going over a bunch of, with the grants and stuff kind of coming due and whatever for the fall for capital projects, just a list of, kind of wants over wishes and see what we can kind of get done around the hall. We had the governance and priority meeting the other night there. Good time. I thought there was some good conversations come out of there and some of the topics that we had. I unfortunately couldn't make it in person. It was virtually because I was in Leduc for the Alberta Recyclers Convention. A lot of really good things coming out from around the province and stuff, especially in the I'll say in that the ag sector was kind of a big surprise to me with some of the recycling they have right now for baling twine and like tote bags and stuff like that, and what they actually use them for after. And they kind of showed the before and some of the broke down materials and explanation for what they're using them. And I was actually surprised with some of the materials are put into like vehicles and whatever after for body panels and stuff at this point. So, baler twine is useful. Don't just pitch it out in a hole.
Worship, and just my curiosity, did you say tote bags that we get at conventions that?
They're talking your like your grain bags, like the
Oh,
big
okay,
plastic
sorry,
kinda-
okay, yeah.
There's more and more places that I'm finding out. I know personally for myself, they're not reusing. They basically become a single-use package, and you end up with a pile of these kicking around after.
To be clear, those are the meter by meter
Yes.
ones that you see
Yeah.
on the, okay.
Yeah. One thing that did come out of the convention that I am gonna say was a little bit alarming, but not surprising. Question came up about the electric vehicles and recycling on those. Given this is an issue that people we are seeing in Europe, given they are a little bit further ahead in this process, I guess we are switching over than we are. And currently in Canada, and people that I know too have had electric vehicles for a while, and they're starting to come to an end of life where it's almost more money to fix than replace the batteries and stuff, and versus getting rid of. And currently, there is no plan or process put in at any level of government as to how or what we're going to do to handle those. The representation they had from the recycling committee from the provincial end was they're hoping that this problem is going to be something that the manufacturers pick up. But we all know, you get a 10 to 15-year-old vehicle, manufacturer doesn't really want to take that on and try to do something with it. Apparently the batteries and stuff they say are recyclable, but nobody knows how or what or when to do anything with it. So it is a problem that is coming. It is on the radar with a lot of municipalities. Another really good facility that they had a tour of was the All Route composting facility up at Westlock. If anybody ever wants to I know they do offer some tours and stuff out there, but they're trying to show the difference at a couple of test plots between your synthetic fertilizers to composting, or composted fertilizer versus non. They should have results, they said, posted early there's sometime in the winter, early spring to kind of show the difference between the yields, but just trying to find a better way to make use of our waste that typically will end up in a landfill or end up someplace else. And they've got everything from like your table scraps to rig mats that they're chipping down and using. So it was a really good conference to attend. And that's what I got.
Okay, any questions to Councillor Cush, Councillor Williams?
We at the Ag Service Board, we talked a lot about recycling of plastics and things like that too, and the lack of places to take it. So we were bouncing the idea around about making, or maybe the county picking up that and making a couple spots of drop off. So do they have
They do have, I saved you guys, show you guys here after, but there is a program in the province, and typically what they do is they partner with the landfills. They'll offer, especially like, so we'll say with twine and stuff, for an example, they'll offer free bags to the farmers and stuff you can take out on your farm, you can fill up. Once they're full, bring them back, and they said typically what they ask is just for a location at the landfills where they can kind of store them. Usually against, or they get some shade or whatever, some places store them inside, but they said a lot of the smaller municipalities or rural, you don't have the infrastructure to hold all the stuff inside of the building. And then they come through, I believe it was like once a month or once every couple months, and they collect everything in the roll. So,
No, that's really good, because that was one of the things we talked about is twine, because the members at large on the Ag Service Board are farmers, and that's a big concern for them about how much, and lots of people burn it or throw it in the bin, and it takes up a lot of room even, so.
yeah.
Definitely something we should talk about. Go back to
I
Ag Service Board.
saved the website, whatever, off there. They didn't have any business cards, unfortunately, to take, so I kept the information I could, so we could take a look at it.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dean.
Well, I actually had quite a few things going on since our last meeting. So chronologically, Jeremy and I played in the Martin Long golf tournament, and we had a resident, Kevin Waiwoda, play with us, and Jeremy carried the team. I think we were -8, and it was fantastic. The next day, I was able to give out candy at the Hamlet Hoedown Parade, and that was a lot of fun. It's always nice to see all the little kids, and everybody was very appreciative of that. And then, like David mentioned, we played in the Anthony Gordon golf tournament, and had another great opportunity to network with the residents in the business community, etc. I had set a goal for our team to be -1, and we were -3, so we hit our goal, we hit our target. September 7th, we had the governance and priorities meeting, and then on the 8th, we had a community services meeting. Monday, I chaired a Golden Triangle meeting, and one of the things that's coming out, or came out of that meeting as a follow-up to a suggestion made in the spring was, so the Golden Triangle is made up of a number of municipalities, Swan Hills, Fox Creek, Whitecourt, MD of Greenview, Big Lakes, Woodlands, and all the municipalities contribute to the cost and the operation of that triangle. So it's a network of trails that connects those communities, and so it had been put out as a suggestion that we maybe try and work with Travel Alberta to see if we can do a promotional video, and there was significant grant funding available for that. The video cost is going to be on the order of $60,000. The Golden Triangle portion of that was about 20%. So, and there was money within their budget to go ahead with that. So that's something we can look forward to. They did say they were going to film in the middle of January, and I'm kind of a fair weather sledder myself. I'm not sure if we'll even have enough snow on the trails then, but we'll see. They said they were flexible. And then, yeah, I attended the Ag Services Board meeting as well, and it's always good to be brought up to speed with what's going on around the province. I did also want to, I had a lady approach me yesterday. Her name is Lynn Connell, and she's spearheading a petition that has been circulating in the community to work with the provincial government and identify the deficiencies at the healthcare center and lobby for hopefully that, you know, a new hospital would get bumped up the capital list at the provincial level. She said her computer died a couple of days ago. She had meant to send a letter to you, John, and CC all of us, and so she just asked me if I could bring it up. What she's looking for is just a letter of support from council in her endeavor to liaise with the provincial government. She's actually been invited to speak at the legislature. I don't have that date, but you she said she's a little nervous, but looking forward to the opportunity. So I don't know what the process is, Mr. CAO, whether you want to put that on the next meeting for council to consider.
It should be just a notice of motion, if you want to put a notice of motion to get it added to the next agenda, and council can look at the request.
Sure. The only proviso I have, and I apologize, I don't have the date that she's going to the legislature, so if it falls before September 28th, which is our next council meeting, could we have that letter circulated and adopted by email? Is that something we can do?
Does that work in our structure for letters of support?
Your worship, members of council, depending on the letter of request, our correspondence policy allows us to do letters of support without council's approval, formal approval, because the policy says that we can do it, as long as there's no funding attached to that. That can just go through administration, and we draft it for the mayor, and I think you've seen some of the support letters, because we typically CC council in those letters, and I'm trying to remember the last grant request that somebody asked us for support. I believe the lunchbox was one that was recently, and council gets a copy of that, so.
Sure.
So if that's, again, the request, that it can be done without council's formal approval. However, and that option is still always available to council to have it here brought forth to the council, so.
So I'm prepared to make a motion. I know Peter's got a question. Could I forward you her contact information and you could clarify what that date is?
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry, there's just a question from Councillor Colgan.
Yeah, it just occurred to me that we work in a bit of a silo here because you're talking about the Golden Triangle and Travel Alberta. We've just spent a pile of money and while to develop that website, and we have an individual who's been now working on some podcasts and filming as well. Marvin Polis is his name, and it might be an idea to link with those guys to promote what you guys are promoting, because it is municipal and it would fit the bill, and he may have some ideas of how you could really, because he also understands how to get the grants, he understands where it would fit. So I think if that's of any help, that would be a good place to start networking.
Maybe we can talk offline about that.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. So a motion to direct administration to consult with Mrs. Lynn Connell on a letter of support in advance of her date to speak at the legislature.
Okay, and this is regarding a new hospital, basically.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. I'll accept that motion. Is there any discussion on it?
Is that a notice of motion? Oh, that's a notice of motion.
That's a notice of motion, yeah. Well, a notice of motion would be to put on the agenda for the next
So
meeting,
you're accepting a motion to allow administration to work with Mrs.
Yes,
Connell?
Okay.
so that's an actual motion,
Yeah,
not a
that's
notice of
correct.
motion.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, it's all good. Okay, so the motion's accepted. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Okay. Any questions to Councillor D? Okay, Councillor Wilhelm.
Yeah, the majority of what I've done is all covered by the other councillors. I attended the MLA Martin Long's golf tournament with Councillor Dean, and then did go to the Anthony Gordon one with Councillor Williams, Councillor Cush, and Councillor Dean. And I couldn't have had two dramatically different games. Friday, I was like, I can play golf. I think I could play this again. And by the end of Monday, I was like, I hate this game. I don't know why I'm here. The tournaments were great, but the game of golf itself, will never understand. Fort Assiniboine, I did get to go to the hoedown. I went for the breakfast. They must have had a pretty historic turnout for that.
650 people.
Yeah, because I went for breakfast and they had run out of food by the time I got there. So I don't think they were expecting as many people as there. And then when I walked in, I was just quite shocked by the amount of people in the rec area and walking around. So fantastic thing for that community. And then probably burnt off 1,000 calories running around handing out candy to kids. So it was a great time. They did have a Lac St. Anne Foundation meeting where we approved our strategic planning for the year, or for the upcoming 3 or 4 years, and some interesting news coming out of there. I don't know if anybody knows, but there had been in Whitecourt a low-income / seniors facility that was supposed to be funded through Wellspring and the Alberta government, and that program or that facility is no longer happening through them. So Lac St. Anne is going to be looking at a large, I think 16 unit, either low-income housing or seniors low-income housing units for the area as well, just to better service Woodlands and Whitecourt region. So we'll see how the funding can be achieved for that, and if funding that may have gone to Wellspring, we'll see if we can get that for this facility, and if that'll go ahead. But that'd be a great addition to the area, because I know that some residents have commented that in Woodlands specifically, that their seniors are having to go to communities that are much farther away for their elder years, and they're looking to try to get something closer to the region that where their parents can stay. So this will hopefully fill that gap. And then I had a community services meeting, and not much to come out of that it wasn't already covered. So that was it for me.
Okay, thanks. Any questions to Councillor Wilhelm?
How many golf balls did you have in that golf team?
Between you and I, there was a lot lost.
Uncountable. Yep. It was not good.
That's why you buy mulligans.
Exactly.
I saw this big bag, I thought it was like Santa Claus or something.
Golf balls are a consumable. That's it. It was not good. Okay, Councillor Culkin.
Yeah, I had a fairly busy last few days. Unfortunately, I missed the hoedown. I was on holidays, and I discovered that even when you're on holidays and you take your laptop with you, you still have lots of folks having you to address issues. So, but it was a good holiday. I did attend another bicentennial meeting on the 31st, where we started to refine how we're going to approach that celebration, and some of our staff was there, and we've kind of got a direction now. And I guess the thing with it is that we would like to make it an invitation. So, we invite people to the celebration. So we want a lot of the activities and stuff like that. We don't want an entry fee. We just want to know who's coming. So they're working on how to do that. We have the Canadian Voyageur Brigade organizing that, and these are people that come from all over Canada to enjoy the trip down the Athabasca River, and we're trying to include Whitecourt here, Fort Assiniboine, and then Barhead County at Viga, and then Chisholm, which would be in the Athabasca, I believe, area, and then Athabasca town itself, which is kind of how the brigade would go. And it was highly successful in Fort Assiniboine the last time around, and that's thanks to a lot of work that was done, again, by some of our staff, Kara and Heather, and a lot of volunteers. So what they're looking at now is trying to get some funding out of the CIP grant, which is difficult because of the way it has to be spent. But they did get a whole lot of donations, and they are going, once they refine that, I'm pretty sure we're going to have something come to council as to how we want to participate. So we're looking as to how we're going to get that into our budget structure. given the circumstances that we're in right now. So that's ongoing. I spent Monday all day setting the route for that. We went all the way from the fort and made contacts with people along the route to get permission for campgrounds and stuff like that, because this stuff has to be organized a long time ahead of time. And met some great people, had nothing but, yeah, we're interested, so we got a lot of traction there. I guess then we had our governance and priorities meeting, which was good discussion. Our Ag Service Board meeting was yesterday, and it was a really good meeting in the sense that what we're exploring now, which is I think what's happening in a lot of municipalities. I've talked with some of the other chairs of some of the other Ag Service Boards, is their frustration about the relevancy of the Ag Service Board, because nothing has really changed in a whole pile of years as to what our mandate is and what we do, and how we serve our farming community. And the agriculture has changed tremendously. So I think we're going to start having conversations as to how we can make that relevant with the new realities that we're facing: energy transition, food security, and all of those things. I think the Ag Service Board may start to shift its priorities as to what we support and what kind of research we do. So that was part of the discussion we had, which was, I think, very productive. The other one that's interesting is exactly what you talked about, the plastics, the recycling. I think there really needs to be some linking between, because we're in agriculture, we're struggling with plastics. Some of them they found uses for, and some of the soft plastics they haven't yet, but they're getting there. And I guess that's something that is impacting our landfill. And I agree. There's a lot of work being done, and there's a lot of challenges, but I think we're on the right track. I had a very interesting meeting then after the service board meeting. I went to St. Albert and had a meeting with Growth, and we've been struggling as to try to figure out who we are and what our purpose is. And we've had a lot of help from our EDO here in setting the direction and the discovery was that the REITs themselves were never really structured to be successful. We looked at a lot of the ones around the province that basically are a rural economic development association, but really have no impact, and they don't address the regional concerns that the way that they should be addressed. So what we've done is we've hired 2 consultants, and we're going to completely redraft how we operate under that umbrella, so we can still access the funding, but we have an identity that actually is beneficial to the dollars that we as a council spend in trying to figure out how we create regional economic development. So it was a pretty visceral meeting, because we had to draw out some things that were old traditional people thinking in the old way that really isn't working anymore. And I see we've given the responsibility to these consultants to put together some workshops, and we're going to go into the different communities or council areas, and I think that it's in alignment with our want to start to network with the County of Lac St. Anne, and because there needs to be a conversation of what's important to all of us, because the Sightling Conference really reinforced that a lot of these folks are not looking just for one place to place a investment, but what are the resources that they have available to them, and what are the strengths of the different communities. And we have to get rid of this idea that just because we need to have investment in our area, that we only look at ourselves. And I think that's the only way we're going to be able to keep these economic development associations relevant and have them actually do things that develop things regionally. And so I think we're on the right path there now. Once we get into the meetings with the different councils and we get more brains than just the ones that were sitting around the table yesterday talking about this and trying to mold how we're going to do these things with a number of different municipalities. I think once we do that, I think we'll get an identity and get a direction. And I'm pretty happy about how the meeting turned out yesterday. It's the first time I left there feeling that, yeah, maybe we have a chance of actually doing what we're supposed to do. So, other than that, just the regular chores, and it's it's been a pretty enjoyable summer.
Any questions to Councillor Copeland? No? Okay. I'll wrap it up, I guess. So I got back from holidays. I went for a week and a half back Ontario way. And I kind of shut down. I didn't answer anything other than administrative phone calls and things like that. So there was a few things. What I can do is bring you up to date on some of the issues with the RMA. So there's going to be an RMA town hall, and I'm hoping everybody got this email on LGFF, which is the new MSI, on September the 19th. An interesting definition that we're having a hard time around is the idea around core services. So depending on what municipality you're located in, there is no definition around core services. So in some municipalities, I would dare to venture it's our municipality that core infrastructure is roads, bridges, culverts, things like that. That's core infrastructure. Other municipalities consider swimming pools and some of these other rec centers as core infrastructure. So that's a lot of the funding question around this new formula. The other thing that has been taking a ton of my time is the Species at Risk Act from the feds on the Chinchaga Caribou region. The directive from the feds is basically a 65% sterilization of the area, and that's, if that goes through the way that it reads, you're probably going to lose a couple of mills. Oil and gas will get shut down in the area around Grand Prairie, and we're going through this process right now, but I don't know how you're going to get to that 65% mark when we're having conversations around the definitions of what disturbed is. So if there's a cut line that's, if there's a seismic line that runs through there, they take 500 meters on either side and they call it a kilometer of being disturbed down that whole section. And I don't know that they have good definitions around what constitutes undisturbed when it goes back to being undisturbed. So there's a lot of conversation back and forth on that, but I've got 3 more days of that coming up too. Other questions or conversations that I've been having with residents come from around some of the road work that we've been doing and changing things back to gravel in a couple of areas, pulverizing some of that cold mix that's not serviceable to us anymore. And this is a conversation that we're going to have as council is our levels of service around that. The one thing that I've definitely taken away from this is that we need to up our game on the communications end. So when road work like that, significant road work like that is being done, in the area, the residents somehow or another, we need to make them aware that there's gonna be a change in their level of service coming. So I stand by the policy the way that we drafted it back in 3 years ago where we were, but again, the communication to the residents needs to come up. So it's gonna be a discussion that we will be having, so. With that, I think I'm done. Any questions? Sorry?
Meeting with the ADM representative. Meeting with the ADM representative?
Oh, yeah, we had a meeting with the, we can talk about that one? The assistant deputy, no, well, it was supposed to be the assistant deputy minister. And he went on holidays, so I had a meeting with a couple of the administrators from municipal affairs regarding the ICF between the two municipalities, between Woodlands and town of Whitecourt. So just a message from them to keep working on it. Any questions for me?
Any timelines, or just they recognize that there's dialogue in progress, or what was the tone of that meeting?
What was the tone of the meeting? It was basically structural, and this is part of the frustration on my end, is that I think in the position that we sit and the position the administration sits in are two completely different situations, or two completely different positions. So the administrators, they're looking at, within this current framework that we have developed under the legislation, how do we get this done? I'm trying to carry this council's message and a lot of council's message that the legislation is broken. It doesn't work. We're behind it in the fact that we agree with the principle that it's set on to reduce the burden to taxpayers, to reduce duplication. We absolutely get that. But the reality is that the way it's written at the moment and the way certain things went through, it puts the other municipality on the hook for a percentage of a cost you can't control. And that's the removal around municipal autonomy. That's a huge issue. And I can't have that conversation with administrators. I need to have that conversation with an elected official, and at the moment, they're not talking to me at all. So we'll hopefully get a chance to talk to them at the RMA. But I did definitely ask them to carry that message back to the GOAs to, try and reach out. I was very cordial about it. I just said I need the communication, because everybody was getting communication except on the elected official. That was the frustrating part. And it's brand new legislation. We fully understand that it's gonna need a little warranty work along the way, because you don't know how this stuff is gonna shake out until you start trying to implement it.
So no sense of urgency, no deadlines, nothing like that?
Nope, I didn't get a specific deadline.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, if I may,
Oh, please.
because it is on part of my thing, the municipal affairs representatives offered to be an observer of our future meetings in regards to between the town and Whitecourt and ourselves, and we both parties have agreed that will take place after our next meeting, because we had a meeting on Monday, and I'll speak to that when it's the CAO's update. But they also offered a possibility of a grant to help with a facilitator, and both parties have had a brief discussion about that, but have not taken them up on that offer at this point in time. And basically they're to send the message to the minister. The minister believes that ICF legislation is we have to adhere to that, and both parties have to work together to get an ICF agreement. So, and that's where we're at from that perspective.
Yeah, and we've never wavered from that.
Mhm.
We've always tried to get the meetings, so.
Sorry, I missed something. You're gonna elaborate on?
I had a meeting on Monday with the town.
Okay.
It wasn't at that one. Okay, Councilor Push?
So I'll move the council reports, any questions and information.
Thank you, Councilor Push. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried, and now I gotta get back to my agenda, so we go over to the CAO's report now.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, I'm going to kind of go to the future and then work my way back. On October 17th, you have a scheduled leadership training. And we also need to schedule some budget deliberation meetings for council to understand, or one, provide us with any direction in regards to what you see changes in the budget or where the focus may shift. Our premises is that as we're beginning to work on our 2023 budget, is it's based on the financial recovery, which is a 1% increase in expenditures, 3% increase in tax revenue, and from there, just making minor adjustments. Is capital increased as well?
Capital, your worship, members of council, I believe capital is still capped at 3 million.
Still $3 million, so. So if council can let us know what their dates, and I was thinking if October 17th is around that, I don't know, again. From your perspective, your busy schedules that you have, what would work?
Do you want to start with the October 17th, or?
No, we have already
Scheduled
scheduled
already,
October.
right?
That's an all-day thing, yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm gone that next week. I'm available prior to that and after, so I'm back on the 24th.
I'm just, 26, yeah, because you guys go back to work or?
Well, I have the week of the workshop, I have the 18th and the 21st. And then the following week, the 25th and 26th with council, or sorry, 25th and 27th with council being in the middle there.
I also have the 18th and the 21st of October. And the 27th.
Available or not available?
Available. 27th and 28th.
Depending how long the council meeting, the 26th goes, we could always, if it goes like 1 o'clock too, we could have budget discussions after.
I'm good with the 27th. Works for me. That, Al, you said you went back to the 24th?
Yeah, and then I'm scheduled for that
Is it possible to do it after the council meeting, like?
ARPA conference, but would that be evening on the 27th or?
Entirely up to council,
Yeah.
like again, is, the 26th, if you schedule, even if we have a preliminary discussion from, let's say, 2 to 4, after the council meeting, that would give us some general direction, discussion about some of the high-level stuff that we would be bringing forth. And then some of the more detailed stuff on the 27th, and then in November, we would do presentations to council on the actual budget.
So I can definitely forego one day of that ARPA conference and make myself available on the 27th. So you're saying 2 consecutive meetings?
Yeah, and I'm, again, So the intent on the first set of meetings would be councils, any items that they want to consider moving in any direction or any specific projects and stuff, and then discussion on capital based on, we would have some preliminary numbers on capital for the most part. And I'm looking at you, Mr. Bashan, that for the 27th of October, I mean, again, most of them are your projects available, so. But again, and again, Councillor Culkin talks about the, I'm aware of some of the funding requests that the organization for the bicentennial may want, so that may be somewhere that discussion can occur. So, are your conference start on the 27th?
I think it does, but I mean,
That's
clearly.
the forestry one? Is that the one you're talking?
It's the recreation.
Oh, the
conference.
recreation one,
It's
yeah.
in Jasper, but I could just go after the meeting, after the budget meeting.
And if we did 2 to 4, and if we need to continue in the morning on the 27th, if we did 9 till noon, say, would that work?
9 till noon on the 27th?
Yeah.
Anything on the 26th?
2 to 4.
Yeah. I've got a mess on the 26th that.
You're not at that council meeting that day?
I'm not sure, because there's a finalization of the, no, that's an LAPP. I've got 3 other meetings on that day, so I've gotta figure something out, but I'm here, for Woodland, so we'll probably beg out of those other commitments.
Sure, that's also org meeting.
Sorry?
The org meeting's on the 26th in the morning, though?
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, gotta be there.
Followed by our regular council meeting.
Yeah.
And then, so budget meeting at 2 on the 26th and at 9 on the 27th.
If that works for council?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put it in your calendar, and again, if something changes in the meantime, we have a little bit of time to do that. Your worship, if I can move on and quickly, I am working with the MD of Brazil consultant that they've retained to do a draft, an RFD for, a draft resolution to come to the zone Pembina meeting, and based on their discussions in regards to that, it would be the MD of Brazil wants to look at some amendments or changes to the ICF legislation. So I haven't seen the proposed resolution, however, I'm supposed to have it this week. So that'll come to your October 3rd Pembina zone meeting. Andre and Kara and I met with the Alberta Environment people about an application for fish-bearing grant that may be available, and this is to remove fish barriers on potential streams and identifying where there are fish-bearing streams within Woodlands County. And we're on the very edge of the fish-bearing streams that are included in their survey, and so there is an individual in Whitecourt that has created the app for Alberta Environment that identifies fish-bearing streams, and then we're going to make that application and get a grant, and we'll assist with them to identify the areas in ours. They've done some just out on the old Blue Ridge Highway, and that they've identified some up in the Swan Hills area as well, so not in our jurisdiction, but in that area. The staff appreciation is next Friday. The Florida Cinema office will be closed. We are having the luncheon for the staff and then some awards for them. And this is in lieu of the staff barbecue that we normally do, and we're in the process of planning the Christmas event, so council will be invited to that. The town and I met on Monday. We had a good discussion in regards to the interpretations of the award that was given, and had a discussion about which individuals' positions, the municipality's position on certain sections of the award, and how they interpret it and how we interpret it. And then, so there was some takeaway for both parties to come back with their position to see if their movement on a number of areas. And so I don't even know if there's any sticking points. There's some interpretations on how do you draft the ICF agreement that is in accordance with the award that then has to be amended in the future. Because there are some things, for example, the water and wastewater agreement is indicated that you have to amend it. There's landfill is part of that. That is an ICF, but there's nothing that's required to do. So how do you tie that in there? Fire is again, there's some wrangling, if I could use that term, to get the wording right so that we meet the obligation of the arbitrator's award. So again, both parties have agreed to go back and relook at their position, and then we're going to set up a next meeting to begin drafting the ICF agreement. We're also working with our lawyers in regards to one of our taxpayers that has been in an agreement that we have a tax payment arrangement with them. We're working with our lawyers to ensure that the individuals, the companies, are aware of their obligations under that agreement. And we sent them a letter 3 weeks ago now in regards to asking to make sure that they're making payments, and we'll continue to work with them to get a resolve to that matter on that. The organizational chart, you all met the new manager of protective services. That individual will report directly to me. So we'll give you an updated organizational chart that shows that as well. Was through the process of interviewing hirings the last month. October 4th and 5th, we have mandatory training of all staff in the fort as well as in Whitecourt over 2 days to do customer services training. So I will be attending both of them as the leader of the organization. And that's all I have.
Okay, any questions to Mr. Rank? when you mentioned that, working to make sure we stay current with, current agreement with a company.
Yeah.
So they've fallen behind, have you?
There's an understanding of their interpretation from the letter that we received from them is that they didn't believe that they're required under the agreement. However, we did send them a couple pages of notes in the agreement where it clearly states that. And I think that the individual that we were working with, their tax agent, is probably having discussions with their president of the organization and stuff.
Okay.
That's, you kind of get that impression, but we haven't received any correspondence back.
Yeah, because in light of the GOA's lack of action, I guess, in that area, and KER doesn't want to do anything, so we might have to get creative.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, I want to make it clear, these agreements are in accordance with the courts that we, that they agreed to, so we do have some legal maneuverability, I guess, if we needed to. However, and I want to make it very clear, the company is cooperating on the other agreement that we have with them. I think we get the sense it's just a misunderstanding from, we're hoping it's a misunderstanding from their accounting people.
Yeah, and I don't want to come off seeming too aggressive on this particular company or anything. The idea is, though, I think that everybody around the table's heard that, you know, the only, I think we have some special liens powers now, which are not tremendously helpful to companies that are headquartered in offshore. So,
Yeah, your worship, that's true in regards to, depending on where the company headquarters are. However, I think there's some other methods that we can look at that we think we can have a discussion in closed session that, if required. And with that, your worship, I smell lunch, so lunch is here.
Okay, well that, and there's no other questions to, okay, motion to accept the CAO report as information. Anyone? Councillor Colgan.
I'll make a motion to accept the CAO report as information.
Okay, what I'm gonna do structurally here, since we're at that part in the agenda, we'll just go ahead, should we go ahead and move into closed session and then break for lunch?
You can do that, your worship, yeah. That's probably a good idea, and then when
Then
you
we
come.
don't have to come back in and out and that kind of thing, so, we have.
Do we need to vote on that, John?
Yes, we, oh, I'm sorry, yes, the motion to accept the CAO's report for information made by Councillor Colgan. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So on the closed session end, we're gonna have 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, 11.4, and 11.5, which is a personnel matter, and those are gonna be under FOIP. 17, 11, so 11.1, 2, and 3 are under FOIP 17. 11.4 is under FOIP 16, and
5 is for 17.
yes, 5 is FOIP 17 as well. So with that, I'll accept the motion to move into closed session. Councilor Wilhelm.
I will motion that council moves into closed session under FOIP 17 for 11.1, 2, and 3, and 5, and FOIP 16 for 11.4.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That puts us in close. Say something at the end here.
Okay, started.
Okay, so we're back from our closed session, and we're just going to be taking a recess for 45 minutes. So we will be back in 45 minutes.
Motion for a recess.
Motion for a recess? Do we have a recess in our,
Yeah, but it's not, again, it's not flushed out.
But that's fine.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
okay.
that's fine.
Motion for a recess, Counselor Cush?
I'll make a motion to go into recess.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Let us know when we're Okay, so we're back from our break. It is 2:50, and we have to move back into closed session to continue dealing with the agenda as we had it under 11, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. So can I get a motion to move into closed session?
So moved. Motion to move into closed session. Do I need to quote the FOIP? Same as before?
Probably should.
Section 17,
It's,
20.
yeah, 17, 17, 17, 16, and 21.
So motion to move into camera using for FOIP on the following agenda items: 17, 17, 17,
16,
16, and
21.
21.
Yep. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We'll just wait for Nikita. All right. We're good? All right. Thought we were on dial-up there for a minute. Okay, we've got some motions to make after coming out of closed session on item 11.1. Counselor,
Make a motion that council accepts the RFD's information.
okay, any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Item 11.2.
I'll make a motion that council directs administration to allocate $2,000 for land purchases.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilhelm. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Item 11.3, Councillor Copeland.
I'll make a motion that we direct administration to negotiate the purchase of land for required right-of-way.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Copeland. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Councillor 11.4, Councillor Prestige.
I make a motion that council accepts the secondary highway contract as information.
Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And item 11.5.
Make a motion that council accepts the personnel matter as information.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. That brings us to our last item on the agenda, which is adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Councillor Cush, you're reliable there. No discussion on that motion. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We are adjourned. Thanks for joining us, everybody.